Can VAR be saved? Right, I'm fed up of just complaining about VAR. I think we're all sick to death of complaining about VAR. So it's time to start looking for solutions. And look, it's never going to disappear. And I feel like we've all at some point boiled up to that just scrap it. But it is never going to be scrapped. The genie is out the bottle. The horse has bolted. Whatever phrase you want to use. Now that we have VAR, we can never not have VAR. And if you think about it, if we scrapped VAR this summer, within the first weekend of next season, you would have 3 or 4 shocking on-field decisions, and most people would be going, okay, we need VAR because, that's awful. So how do we solve it? How do we get to a stage where the majority of people are happy with VAR? Because we're certainly not there at the moment, right? And there are a few key issues with VAR in its current form in the Premier League. The first one of those is that fundamentally, VAR is not getting us to the correct decisions. The purpose of VAR at its very base is to get us to the correct decisions. And it's not doing that. And the Arsenal game is a perfect example. There were 3 key decisions made on field that probably should have been VAR checked, or were VAR checked, and probably should have been overturned. And we all agreed it, even Arsenal fans. The majority agreed. The Havertz one's probably not a penalty, and certainly the Bournemouth goal probably should have stood. And of course, Bukayo Saka, the foul from Ryan Christie, should have been a red card. And we're looking at that, and the majority of people are looking at it going, VAR should be overturning that. And it doesn't. And the fundamental issue is that none of us really now know what the rules are. And none of us know when VAR is checking something, hand on heart, we don't know what the outcome of that check is actually going to be. And that's a really bad place to be in. It should be, the rules of football are ultimately quite simple. They've been very muddled, especially over the last few years, because they've actually changed rules to try and help it be easier for VAR, but it still isn't. But, it should be that anything happens, VAR checks it. 90% of people watching that replay, the same replay that VAR is looking at, 90% of us should know what the outcome is going to be. And that should be the outcome. But right now, I feel like we're in a situation where so often you're looking at it and it's like fans don't know what the answer should be. You end up coming to conclusions from VAR where they don't intervene, where they should intervene, or they do intervene where they shouldn't. And it's this huge mess. And what that has left is this position where there's just no trust. We have no trust in the current group of referees, in Howard Webb, in PGMOL. None of us have trust in it. And all of us will complain at different times when it ultimately and inevitably goes against our club. So how do you solve that? Well, first of all, I think it's a long and difficult process. In the same way that, if a player makes quite a few bad mistakes, they begin to have a sort of, a feeling amongst the fan base of a lack of trust. Gabriel Magalhaes is an example. Granit Xhaka is an example, as an Arsenal fan, where you look, it took them well over a season to rebuild that trust within the fan base. Granit Xhaka had to go about 2 years without getting a red card before people trusted him not to get red cards. Gabriel had to do the same with not making bozo mistakes. And even then, he still has it in him. For referees to do that will be nigh on impossible. And the reason it'll be impossible is because they just cannot avoid making mistakes to that level for that long. And so the current group of refs, I think, need to be disbanded almost. And there's a couple of ways that you can do that and come back. Howard Webb needs to go. He's been in there long enough. He's done more damage than good. And again, his show with Michael Owen has done more damage than good because it just feels like you can't trust him to be honest. They're bringing out highlights of VAR decisions and ignoring the big decisions that we know they got wrong. They're not being transparent. And if they're not being transparent, they can't be trusted. So for me, you get rid of the majority of the current referees. And a big issue is the fact that they're mates, right? We need to break up the best mates. So many of them are from the same part of the country. And we've heard it before. Mike Dean admitted that he didn't make a decision whilst on VAR for the Chelsea game, the Cucurella hair pull. He didn't make that decision to help Anthony Taylor because he's his mate. That is ridiculous, right? So that's something that needs to be stopped. And we need the rest to stop protecting themselves, because what you also see is not that just them protecting their mates that are on VAR, but they're protecting themselves. If they're the referee on field on the Saturday, they're normally the VAR then on the Sunday. Well, if they've made an on-field decision on the Saturday, for example, not to give a handball, right? If they're then the VAR the following day and a very similar type of handball arises, They know, well, yesterday on field, I didn't give that as handball. I probably should have done, but I didn't. Now I'm on VAR and I've seen basically the same handball. If I make the on-field referee overturn his decision now, I look like a massive hypocrite because I didn't give it yesterday. So do I protect myself now and also not give it? And I think we've seen that. I think there was an example where a referee didn't send someone off on one day when he should have done, and then sent off Casemiro. And he got a lot of criticism for being a hypocrite. So then there's an incentive not to do that the following week, even though that's, that means that he gets to the right decision. So it's a mess, right? It is a mess. And so I think the first two things you do, you get rid of half of the current referees. You bring in the best referees from abroad. You look at Clement Turpin, who refereed the Bayern Munich versus Real Madrid game, had a brilliant game. VAR basically wasn't even needed. It did its checks, but it wasn't needed because he got the decisions correct. So you bring in the best referees from abroad. That should, even the competition should elevate the level of the referees that we already have. It also splits up those friendship groups. Then you bring in specialized VAR. You bring in 10 specialist VARs, right? And they do one game each per weekend. And they are robotic in a sense. They are so well drilled as to when and how they should intervene, what they should intervene for. They don't know the on-field referees. They're not mates with them. They've never met them. They're not calling them by their nicknames. They couldn't give a shit. If they have to intervene 6 times in the same game, they will. They won't stop intervening because, it's going to make my mate look bad. They will do it. They're almost like independent auditors. When companies bring in independent auditors to do a review of the company and they have no bias, they have no, connections to the company, they just do it. That's what they need to be. So then you've got better on-field referees making better decisions. You've got better VARs. And the important thing is that those VARs are making consistent decisions because it's the same people week in, week out, judging the game in the exact same way. So you get more consistent VAR, you get better on-field decisions. And then how do you wrap that all up together? Communication. You improve the communication. So those of us that are in the ground, when a decision is made, we see the replays of the decision ourselves. And we have a description by the referee as to why he's changed his decision, if he has changed it, or why he's not changed his decision, if he's not changed it. Because quite often you'll be sat in the stadium and it'll be a VAR check, and the VAR check will go on for ages, and you're waiting and you're waiting and you wait, and then the decision isn't changed. And you go, okay, so what were they looking at? Why were they looking at it? And why, having looked at it for that long, did they not end up changing it? So both outcomes of the decision need to be explained in the stadium. What then also needs to happen is that at home, they need to hear the full conversation between the referee and the VAR. Because more often than not, if you hear the conversation, even if you disagree with the outcome, by hearing the conversation, you at least understand the perspective of the people that have made that decision. It happens in rugby, and it is so much better. And it makes it easier to accept the decisions that have been made. And when that happens, you build the trust again. And it'll take time. It'll take time to rebuild that trust, right? And there are fundamental things also that they can do to just simply improve the level of decisions that have been made. Things like adding cameras along the sides of the pitches and along the goal line, not just the goal line, but going outwards. So if the ball goes out of play, we know it's gone out of play. We don't have to mess around with trying to figure out whether it has or not. More cameras in general to improve the accuracy of decisions. But ultimately, the fundamentals are there. You replace Howard Webb with someone who's not done it before. Don't bring in ex-players as referees, by the way. That won't work. Don't bring ex-players. But you replace Howard Webb, you increase the communication, you get specialized VARs that are consistent with their decisions. Everyone hears why decisions have been made. And I think we can start moving forwards. And ultimately, that's the only way I see it working. That is the only way I see VAR being accepted in football in the same way that the TMO is accepted in rugby or in cricket or in any other sport where it exists. But will we end up there? I highly doubt it. I don't trust Howard Webb to get us there. I don't trust, PGMOL to get us there. I don't trust the Premier League to get us there. But all we can do is hope. I hope you've enjoyed the video. If you did, please leave a like, subscribe if you're new. And I'll be back live tomorrow for the next one. Goodbye.